Omagyanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirviseshas Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is the chapter 80 from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where we can hear about the beautiful story of Sudāmā visiting Kṛṣṇa. So I'm reading from the chapter. Canto 10, chapter 80, text. Well, this is a little bit of a challenge. So it starts with a question, because Balarama's pastimes and all these things are being described. It starts with the question of Parikshit Maharaj being eager to hear more and more. And therefore, it is mentioned that he says, I want to hear more, and therefore, this is being spoken about, this particular topic about Sudāmā, voluntarily by Śukadeva Gosvāmī. I want to hear more about Krishna's pastimes, and therefore this is being heard. So I'm reading here this beautiful shloka about Sudāmā. First, it's a description of Sudāmā and his situation. 10.80.6 is what I'm reading. śrī-śuka vāca kṛṣṇasyāsīt sakhā kaścid brahmaṇo brahma-vittamaḥ virakta indriyārtheṣu praśāntātmā jitendriyaḥ. Śukadeva Goswami said, Lord Krishna had a certain brahmana friend named Sudāmā, who was most learned in Vedic knowledge and detached from all sense enjoyment. Furthermore, his mind was peaceful and his senses subdued. Yadrichayopapannena vartamano grihashrami tasya bharya ku chailasya kṣukṣama cha tatha vidha. Living as a householder, he maintained himself with whatever came of its own accord. The wife of that poorly dressed brahmana suffered along with him and was emaciated from hunger. So two important things. Before that, we'll read a little bit of the purport. Purport: Sudāma's chaste wife was also poorly dressed, and whatever food she obtained, she gave to her husband. Thus she remained fatigued from hunger. Pativrata patim praha mlayata vadanena sa daritram sidamana vai vepamana vigamyacha. The chaste wife of the poverty-stricken brahmana once approached him, her face dried up because of her distress. Trembling with fear, she spoke as follows. Purport: According to Sridhara Swami, the chaste lady was especially unhappy because she could not obtain food to feed her husband. Further, she was fearful to approach her husband because she knew that he did not want to beg for anything other than devotion to the Supreme Lord. Nanu Brahman Bhagavataha sakhā sakshat śriyah pati brahmanasya cha sharanyascha bhagavan sattvatarshavaha. Sudama's wife said, "O Brahmana, isn't it true that the husband of the goddess of fortune is the personal friend of your exalted self? That greatest of Yadavas, the Supreme Lord Krishna, is compassionate to Brahmanas and very willing to grant them his shelter." Right? Okay, here we go. That's better. So finally, Tam upaihi mahabhaga sadhunam cha parayanam dasyati dravinam bhuri sitate te kutumbine. O fortunate one, please approach him, the real shelter of all saints. He will certainly give abundant wealth to such a suffering householder as you. This is interesting. Aste adhuna dvaravatyam bhoja vrishti andhikeshwarah smaratah padakamalam atmanam api yachati kindva arthakamam bhajato nati abhishtan jagat guruhu. Lord Krishna now is the ruler of the Bhojas, the Vrishnis and the Kas, and is staying in Dwaraka. Since he gives even his own self to anyone who simply remembers his lotus feet, what doubt is there that he, the spiritual master of the universe, will bestow upon his sincere worshipper prosperity and material enjoyment, which are not even very desirable. So, purport, the Brahmana's wife here implies that since Lord Krishna is the ruler of the Bhojas, Vrishnis and Andakas, if these opulent rulers merely acknowledge Sudama as a personal friend of Krishna's, they could give him everything he required. In this connection, Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti comments that since Lord Krishna had at this point put aside his weapons, he no longer traveled outside his own capital of Dwaraka. Thus, Srila Prabhupada writes in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Brahmana's wife said, "I have heard that he never leaves his capital city, Dwaraka. He is living there without outside engagements." As mentioned here, material wealth and sense gratification are not very desirable. The reason for this is that in the long run, they give no real satisfaction. Still, Sudama's wife thought, even if Sudama went to Dwaraka and simply remained silent before the Lord, he would certainly give him abundant wealth as well as shelter at his lotus feet, which was Sudama's real objective. Sa evam bharyaya vipro bahushah prarthito muhu ayam hi paramo labha uttama shloka darshanam iti sanchintya manasa gamanaya matim dhade apyasti upayanam kinchit grihe kalyani diyatam. Śukadeva Goswami continued, when his wife thus repeatedly implored him in various ways, the Brahmana thought to himself, to see Lord Krishna is indeed the greatest achievement in life. Thus he decided to go, but first he told her, "My good wife, if there is anything in the house I can bring as a gift, please give it to me." Purport, Sudama was naturally humble, and thus although at first he was dissatisfied with his wife's proposal, finally he settled his mind and decided to go. Now the last detail was that he had to take a gift for his friend. So, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Ram Hare Hare. So this is a wonderful story, as I already mentioned. And it starts with Śukadeva Goswami saying that Krishna had a certain friend called Sudāmā. And Sudāmā, just to recollect something. Sudāmā and Kṛṣṇa were childhood friends. They were school friends. They studied together in Sandipa Muni's ashram. If you go even today, you can see in Ujjain, where we have a beautiful temple set up by His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. And there's a very wonderful place where Krishna performed his pastimes there. And he studied under Sandipani Muni. Sudama also studied there. Balarama also studied there along with Krishna. So there they learned all the 64 arts. And Krishna and Balaram, they showed wonderful capacity to learn very fast. So Sudama was one of the friends of Krishna. And he was always sticking to Krishna, it seems. And Krishna was acknowledging that he is very much interested in being with me. He very much is absorbed in me. So even in the classes, when there was talk about Brahman and Parabrahman, it seems Sudama was simply looking at the face of Krishna. Because I am here, he knew, right next to Parabrahman, looking at the beautiful Parabrahman. What do I need to hear about Parabrahman? So he was always absorbed looking at Krishna, wanting to be with Krishna. He was naturally so attracted to Krishna. And Krishna acknowledged that friendship. With friendship here, he acknowledged that. So it's mentioned they were together many times. And later also we will recollect pastimes of Krishna in the school, in the conversation between Krishna and Sudama. So this was Sudama. Then it seems when the school finished, Sudama did not want to go because he was thinking, if I go, I will not be able to see Krishna anymore, not be able to be with Krishna anymore. How is that possible? So Krishna consoled him and said, don't worry, life is like that. We have to go to our own places and then I'll definitely be in touch with you. You're always, welcome. And this way he consoled him and had him go back. And Sudama's life, he will recollect later to Krishna. He got married and he was very poor. But he was constantly absorbed in Krishna. And so it describes here his very chaste wife, wonderful devotee also, wanted to completely absorb herself in serving her husband. A grihasthini wanted to do her duties perfectly well. Whatever situation I have got by my past karma, I'll try my best to be happy within that. I'll try my best to serve my husband. I'll try my best to do my stri dharma, my patni dharma. And she remained very chaste, very loyal, very tolerant. And they had so many children. I heard somewhere the number was nearly 20 and odd. They had so many children. What a glorious lady she must have been. But she was very respectful to her husband. And they were stricken with poverty like nothing. It's mentioned here she was shivering due to lack of food. Due to hunger, she was shivering. Because here Sridhar Swami is making a comment that everything she at all got, she will immediately feed her husband. What to speak of the children? So abject poverty, a lot of suffering. But she never dared ask him anything. In these days, if people hear these things in Grahastha life, what nonsense they would say. Why doesn't she just raise up and just shout and yell at him and get him out and let him do a job? Bring food. People have to be fed. What an irresponsible man. Just saying poverty and Krishna's devotion hang around. I hate these devotees. I hate these people who just live off society, begging. Why don't they get up and do a job? And why is he? There'll be all sorts of things that people think of and say. But you must understand, a brahmana's main work, Samo damas tapas saucham kshantirarjavamevacha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahma karma svabhavajam. These are the qualities of a brahmana by nature. He is satisfied. He is very peaceful with whatever he gets by Krishna's mercy. And he is focusing on reading the Vedas, conveying the Vedas and communicating it to others, helping society to get knowledge in a very valuable position in the Varnashrama, the head of the society. And they don't normally work. They are looked after by the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. And for whatever reason, it may be even karma from the past, he was poverty-stricken like this. And he was a very, very reserved sadhu. He wouldn't unnecessarily speak. He wouldn't unnecessarily ask, yadricha labha santushtaya, whatever the Lord gives. And that was his nature, so his wife put up with that nature. But then things came to a very extreme level. And shivering, she was afraid of asking him because she knows my husband will never ask for anything apart from pure devotion. Still, she said, let me propose, and she begged him several times. Because every time it seems Sudama will come and say, don't think I'm just an ordinary person. You know who is my classmate? My classmate is Krishna. You know who is Krishna? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman, Purushottaman. You know that? So every time he would come and boast, because social situation is so bad for him. And she would come and say that don't think that, you know, I'm nobody. Just pepping his wife out. You may be temporarily feeling that I don't have money with me and I'm poverty-stricken, but you know who's my friend? My friend is the Krishna. He's the Supreme. He is in Dwaraka. He will look after me. He will shelter me. He was constantly boasting about it. So she came and repeated all those things to him and said, he is the, you know, Lord of the Bhojakas, Andakas, and the Vrishnis, and he is plenty, and he is known to give anything to his devotees, and you know, everything is possible. Why don't you meet him and ask him for some help? What is wrong in asking him for help? Because you are so poverty-stricken, my dear Lord, my dear husband, I feel so much for you and for my situation that I'm not able to feed you. It is my duty to cook and feed you. Right? So these are ancient values nowadays. It's the duty nowadays of the wife to tell the husband, go order a pizza if you want anything. I'm not cooking today. And I don't know how to cook also. And anyway, if I cook, you don't eat because it's not good. Why don't we just go to the restaurant? Why don't the kids all have a good time? So why don't we just do that? Forget cooking. I can't cook, you know. I worked late till last night. You know, I came back from office very late. Forget it. So values are totally different. In order to understand these pastimes, you have to be situated in the proper time, period, circumstance with the values associated with such Vedic living. That's why I'm punctuating with, please understand that you are in a different time, place, and circumstance in history. And the values were totally different. And these are cherished values of a woman. So this does not mean that I'm advocating that all women should go poverty-stricken and remain chaste and suffer everything the husband does and imitate. You know, her name is Kalyani, sometimes I'm told. Kalyani, the wife of Sudāmā. The Bhagavatam also refers to this verse as Kalyani. So, Kalyani means the auspicious woman. So, she was poverty-stricken. He was poverty-stricken. And she asked him this repeatedly. So one fine day, something struck him. He didn't have any reason. So who's going to go and ask money to? Who's going to go ask some material help to Krishna? It was clear. It was a given that he would never do it. And she also knew he won't. So she kept repeatedly telling him this. So one day, suddenly another idea came into him. By the inspiration of the Lord in the heart, who wanted to see Sudāmā, and who was always conscious of the fact that Sudāmā is thinking of him and is so Krishna conscious. The Lord enjoys the relationship of the devotee, of the pure devotee. Whatever material situation he is in does not matter. Actually, in that poverty-stricken situation, Sudama's Krishna consciousness was very high, and that was enjoyed by the Lord without disturbing his material situation. But since the wife had implored, and she is also a devotee, the Lord actually enacted this pastime of enabling Sudama to come all the way to meet him. You could have very well said, why in such a poverty-stricken situation he has to come all the way? He could have very well come here. That is the Lord's choice in a variety of the pastime. So what happened? So, ayam hi paramo labha uttama shloka darshanam. He is thinking in his mind, ayamo hi paramalabha. Wow, my greatest benefit, my greatest profit will be that I'll be able to see Krishna. This is a good reason to go to see Krishna because my wife is anyway saying it. And he convinced himself, I must go. Why? I'll get to see Krishna. What is the reason? What my wife is saying. But my main reason is, I'll get to see Krishna, associate with him again. How many years are over since I left him in school? This was his thought. Ayam hoi paramalabha. Greatest benefit. Uttama shloka darshanam. Uttama shloka, Krishna's name, who is described the choicest poetry. That person, the supreme absolute truth, is called Uttama shloka. Uttama shloka darshanam. I will be able to see him. I'll be able to have his darshan. So he thought like this. And that thought was convincing to him. Yeah, now I'll go. Because the benefit is I'll be able to see him. Otherwise, what benefit was there for me? I am not interested in asking him for anything material. And I don't want anything material from the Lord. He was determined. And his wife also knew about the nature of her husband. So she implored him. And seeing the desire of the wife, knowing the desire of Sudama, Krishna satisfied both their desires. This is a beautiful story. Because the wife has a legitimate desire. And she's actually asking Krishna through Sudama, right? Please do something for me. I want to serve your devotee. He is going hungry. Never mind, I go hungry. But isn't your devotee going hungry? Isn't he suffering poverty? I want to do something for him. Please. This was the real feeling which Krishna reciprocated. My dear devotee, Sudama's wife, I will definitely reciprocate. And I will also have Sudama get my darshan. Both of you will be satisfied. Both of you will be happy. And that is what I desire. In this way, Krishna enacted this wonderful pastime. And amazingly, you will see that Sudama will go all the way and ask for nothing. He is so happy seeing Krishna. He is in an ocean of bliss. He doesn't even bother to ask. But Krishna knows what his wife wants. And his wife is a very, very chaste devotee, a servant of the servant. Tvad britya britya paricharaka britya britya brittasya britya itimam shmara lokanath. Krishna looks after his devotee's devotee, his devotee's servant. And because you are the britya britya paricharaka brittasya britya itimam shmara lokanath. So Sudama asks, is there anything? Ya chitva chaturo mushtin vipran pratukatandhulan chaila kandhena tan padhava patre pradat upayanam. He asks, is there anything that I can give as a gift to Krishna? Anything in the house? He knows very well there's nothing at home. And still he's asking this. So his wife again says, my husband is asking, I must do. She gets down to, it's mentioned, to the back of the house. She goes and she gets to go through and ask some of those Brahmin households, can you please give me a little bit of this thing? My husband is going to Dwarka. I'll be very, very grateful to you, please. And they gave. They all gave one mushti each of flat rice. So she bought, is mentioned here, Vipran Prituka Tandulan. Tandulan means, Prituka Tandulan means flat rice. So, Chaila Kandena Tan Bhadva, she tied it up in a torn cloth. Bhartre Pradat Upayanam. Bhartre means Bharta. She went to her husband and she gave Upayanam, that gift, thinking in her mind about Kṛṣṇa. So she went and begged this 4 handfuls of rice, right? It is mentioned very nicely. Yachitva Chaturo Mushtin, 4 handfuls of rice. Vipran Prituka Tandulan, the Brahmana's wife. So you can imagine just how it is. And taking that flat rice, the saintly Brahmana set off for Dwaraka, all the while wondering, how will I able to have Krishna's audience? That's what he's thinking about. Krishna Sandarshanam Mahyam Katam Syaditi Chintayan. You think about this only and went. Not about, getting the money and I'll ask him this, I will plan this. If I say this, he may think like this. So let me ask like this and think about strategies and how to ask. Nothing. That's not in his mind. Ayam hohi paramalabham uttama shloka darshanam. He is only thinking about, wow, I'll get to see Krishna now. How wonderful. I hope everything goes fine and I get to the palace to see him. So, among other things, Sudāmā assumed that the gatekeepers would stop him. That's another thing. So, actually, he knew that he was so poverty-stricken. He didn't have even clothes to wear properly. His clothes were torn. And he was so thin. And it's mentioned he arrived there, his ribs were sticking out. The poverty of Sudāmā is described so much here. The learned brahmanas, joined by some local brahmanas, passed through God. So he got into the group of some other brahmanas who were also going and merged with them. If he goes alone, definitely he'll be stopped. He looks like a beggar. And they'll ask, what have you got to do in Dwaraka? Why you need to see this thing? So he mixed with other brahmanas. And he went through 3 gateways, and then he walked by the homes of Lord Krishna's faithful devotees, the Andakas and Vrishnis, which ordinarily no one could do. He then entered one of the opulent palaces belonging to Lord Hari's 16,000 queens. And when he did so, he felt as if he were attaining the bliss of liberation. Purport: when the saintly Brahmana entered the precincts of Lord Krishna's palaces, and then actually entered one of the palaces, he completely forgot everything else. And thus his state of mind is compared to that of one who has just achieved the bliss of spiritual liberation. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti quotes from the Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda, when he learned that the Brahmana actually entered the palace of Rukmini. Satu Rukmini antaha puradvari kshanam tushning stitaha. He stood for a moment in the silence at the doorway of Queen Rukmini's palace. Tam vilokyachyuto durat priya paryankamastitaha sahasothaya chabhyeta dhurbyam paryagrahin mudha. At that time, Lord Achyuta was seated on his consort's bed. Spotting the Brahmana at some distance, the Lord immediately stood up, went forward to meet him, and with great pleasure embraced him. So, Paryagrahit, Kṛṣṇa was royal as ever in his palace with Rukmini, sitting on Rukmini's bedstead. And then from a distance, he sees this half-naked Brahmana with torn cloth and ribs sticking out and eyes sunken in from days of walking and coming and just managing here and there by begging and getting whatever to eat. He has come with so much enthusiasm to see Kṛṣṇa. And there's no other thought in his mind. He's not thinking of food. He's not thinking of water. He's not thinking of rest. He's so eager and enthusiastic to see Krishna. And Krishna spots him. And he goes immediately out of the palace. It's mentioned he meets him at the gateway. And he raises his hands and, Sudāmā, you've come. And he goes up to him and embraces him. And then what? Krishna is so equally eager to see Sudāmā. So equally eager to get the association of Sudāmā. Why? Because of pure devotion that he has for Krishna. He is purely devoted to Krishna. And because of that, he has got great value with Krishna. The world may not recognize people like Sudāmā, who have a different value system. They value bhakti, and they don't want anything else but the Lord's favor in terms of increasing their devotion. And that's a deep and wonderful only value that we need to really sustain. And here is Sudāmā standing only on that value. And how Krishna is recognizing that and coming forward and embracing Sudāmā and crying, why? You are so wonderful. You are so devoted. For you, devotion is the only sustaining aspect. And you value it so much. You see, often how much do we value we, other things that we do? You know, our assets, the maintenance of our properties, the maintenance of our relationships, our position in this world. We may spend a lot of time on all these things. In fact, they are very important to us, no doubt. But in the process, our devotion gets very less attention, or just about enough attention. Or what can I do? You know, there's so many things to do and so many things to attend to. And you may be very good at everything that you attend. You may be legitimate in saying, I have to attend to my children. I have to attend to my wife, to my husband, to my parents. No doubt. No doubt. And I'm not saying that Sudāma's neglect of his family and his this thing need to be, imitated. No. His situation was like that. And he was a devotee who was actually very absorbed in Krishna. So these are difficult things for most people to explain and understand. But one who understands bhakti from the pages of the Bhagavatam can understand that the Lord knows the situation of Sudāmā. And you can see how he reciprocates with Sudāmā, right? So Krishna got up from his seat and Sakyuhu priyasya viparshe anga sangati nirvritaha prito vyamunchat abbindhu netrabhyam pushkare kṛṣṇaha. Very beautiful. See, pritaha, very affectionately, vyamunchat, he released bindun, drops of water, netrabhyam, pushkara kṛṣṇaha, the lotus-eyed Lord. Prito vyamunchat abbindhum netrabhyam pushkare kṛṣṇaha. From his beautiful lotus eyes, tears fell on the shoulder of Sudāmā as anga sangati nirvritaha prito vyamunchat abhibindhum. He embraced Sudāmā and he put his chin on his shoulder of Sudāmā and closed his lotus eyes. And from his lotus eyes streamed tears. Lord is shedding tears, happiness on being with Sudāmā. You must just deeply think about this. The lotus-eyed Supreme Lord felt intense ecstasy upon touching the body of his dear friend, the wise brāhmaṇa, and thus he shed tears of love. He felt ecstasy on touching the body of Sudāmā, that dirty body, not taken bath maybe, dust, grime, traveled and walked for so many days together, that dirty, tatter finery cloth he was wearing, that ribs sticking out, that Sudāmā with sunken eyes. Physically, he must have looked horrible. But he was very beautiful devotionally. He was so beautiful that Kṛṣṇa was attracted to him. Who is going to see that beauty in this world? Nobody can see that beauty, the beauty of Bhakti. And Kṛṣṇa is embracing the devotee Sudāmā filled with Bhakti and shedding tears. This we must understand. Kva ham daridra papiyan, kva Krishna śrī-niketanah, brahma-bandhu iti smaham bahubhyam parirambitah. Later, while going back home, Sudāmā will recollect this, that he embraced me, the Lord. Kva ham daridra papiyan. I am a daridra-stricken, poverty-stricken, sinful brahmana. Kva Krishna śrī-niketanah. And who is Kṛṣṇa? Kṛṣṇa is the residence of the goddess of fortune on his chest, Srivatsa. And he pressed that chest on my chest, where the great Lakshmi is situated. And he embraced me. Brahma-bandhu, I am a fallen brahmana. Iti smaham, that's what I know about myself. Bahubhyam parirambitah. He used his huge arms, long arms. Kṛṣṇa has got very long arms. Jayati janani vaso devaki janmavado yaduvara parishit swair dhorbhyam asyat adharmam sthirachara vrijana sushmita shrimukhena vrajapura vanitanam vardhayan kamadevam. It's mentioned, Jayati janani vaso devaki janmavado yaduvara parishit swair dhorbhyam asyat adharmam. He has got long, strong arms, and that is being glorified by Śukadeva Gosvāmī in the Bhagavatam. So same way here, with those long arms, he tightly embraced Sudāmā and enjoyed the ecstasy of touching the body of Sudāmā. Just like Lord Chaitanya enjoyed the ecstasy of touching the body of Sanatana Goswami. Even though Sanatana Goswami had sores on his body, suppurating sores, blood and pus was dripping out of it. And he told, my Lord, don't come near me. Don't touch me. I'm contaminated. I'm a sinful person. But the Lord said, no, no. And he forcefully embraced Sanatana Goswami. He said, I want the association. I want to physically associate with you. Touch your body, because that is very good for me. You are the guru of the whole universe, the creation. And associating with you is so beneficial to me. And he forcefully embraced Sanatana Goswami and gave Sanatana Goswami a lot of pain. So why are you doing this to me? You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are so exalted. You are a sannyasi. You shouldn't do this to me. I am a fallen person. He said, no, I am relishing it. So Kṛṣṇa relishes embracing his devotees. Now we are on social distancing. We can't touch another devotee. We can't even go close by 6 feet. Social distancing. Cover your face. Half your face is covered. You can't see the other devotee's face. How horrible. Devotees, embrace each other, touch each other, and benefit a lot by their purity. We are not able to do that. What to speak of anything else. But Kṛṣṇa is not constrained by COVID. Kṛṣṇa is not constrained by the coronavirus in any way. He's transcendental. His body is transcendental. And he will go ahead and embrace whether you have corona or not. If we are eager like Sudāmā, he's got nothing stopping him. We are stopped because our mental conceptions are like that, right? This is explained in detail by Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami. Why he embraced, in spite of Sanatana Goswami saying no. So here we can see Kṛṣṇa relishing the embracing. He is relishing. Then what did he do? Lord Krishna seated his friend Sudāmā upon the bed. Then the Lord, who purifies the whole world, personally offered him various tokens of respect and washed his feet, O king, after which he sprinkled the water on his own head. He anointed him with the divinely fragrant sandalwood, aguru, and kumkuma pastes, and happily worshipped him with aromatic incense and array of lamps. After finally offering him betel nut and the gift of a cow, he welcomed him with pleasing words. See, Padavenjani, he used the water that is coming out of the lotus feet of Sudāmā and put it on his head. Samharanam upahritya avajaniya, that is means he's washing. Avajaniya asya pado pada avajainahi. He took the water falling from the feet of Sudāmā on his head. How happy Krishna must be to do this. And what would have been Sudāma's situation? Like Sanatana Goswami must have felt very highly ashamed and disturbed, because he was such a mild, nice devotee, very gentlemanly devotee. So he must have felt very bad. But then he's a brāhmaṇa, and here is Krishna, a grihastha, and that is allowed. And so he had to succumb to that. And his feet were washed by Krishna. And he gave him so many wonderful things. Kuchailam malinam kshamam dvijam thamani santatam devi paryacharat sakshat chamara vyajanena vai. By fanning him with her chamara, the divine goddess of fortune personally served that poor brahmana, whose clothing was torn and dirty, and who was so thin that the veins were visible all over his body. Watching Krishna serve Sudāmā, whole palace was completely shocked. Who is this person? He's getting so much attention from Krishna. Half-naked brahmana, no clothes on his body properly, thin, scrawny looking, dark, ribs and veins shown out, and he's attending to him so much. He must be somebody very, very important. And everybody was scrambling and doing service for Sudāmā, for Krishna, to be able to. They bought all these worshipping items. They bought that. They bought everything for Krishna to do what he wanted. And Krishna gave him a royal welcome, according him a royal welcome, befitting a grihastha, a personality like Krishna in his palace. And seeing that, even Lakshmi thought, I should also do something my husband is doing. So she picked up the chamara and she was fanning Sudāmā. Can you imagine? Lakshmi fanning this poor Sudāmā, because she knew he's very important to Krishna. He's full of devotion. And she fanned that breeze from goddess of fortune Lakshmi on Sudāmā was enough for all prosperity. If Krishna wills, then why not Lakshmi will support you? If you're a devotee of Krishna, why you need to worry about your maintenance? Why you need to worry about money? Why you need to worry about any of these things? It is a given that Lakshmi will reside there. The dampatyo kalo nasti tatra sri swayamagataha. In a place like Sudāma's place, Lakshmi will be very happy to stay, but she needs the permission of Krishna. Right? That's the way it goes. Krishna was keeping him in poverty-stricken state and enjoying the wonderful devotional rasa expressed by Sudāmā. And when he came home, Krishna actually gave permission to Lakshmi. Now you look after. It started with fanning of Sudāmā. And then comes the wonderful scene of Krishna speaking to Sudāmā. So many wonderful things. And he starts talking to him. We will read that a little bit, it's getting late. Antah purajano drishtva Krishnena malakirtina Vismito abhut ati pritya avadhutam sabhajitam. The people in the royal palace were astonished to see Krishna, the Lord of spotless glory, so lovingly honor the shabbily dressed brahmana. Kimanena kritam punyam avadhutena bhikshuna shriya hinena lokaismin garhitena dhamena cha yo asau triloka guruna Srinivasena Sambritah Paryankastham Shriyam Hitva Parishbhakto Agrajo Yatha. The residents of the palace said, "What pious acts has this unkempt, impoverished Brahmana performed? People regard him as lowly and contemptible. Yet the spiritual master of the three worlds, the abode of goddess Shri, is serving him reverently. Leaving the goddess of fortune sitting on her bed, the Lord has embraced this Brahmana as if he were an older brother." People in the palace will all be talking to everybody. Who is this? Why is he getting so much importance? He must be somebody very important. He's not even looking at Rukmini. He's completely absorbed in Sudhama. No, he looks a beggar. Khatayam chakratur gata hai. Purva Gurukule Sataho Atmanor Lalita Rajan Karo Grikya Paraspadam. Śukadeva Goswami continued, "Taking each other's hands, O King, Krishna and Sudāmā talked pleasantly, but how they once lived together in the school of their Guru. Now comes the friendship. They are friends. So Krishna is now exhibiting his friendship. First he was a grahastha, welcoming him. First he became a Krishna reciprocating the devotion of Sudāmā by embracing him and crying sincerely, and then bringing him inside and doing his duty as a grahastha. And now he's taking the role of a friend, holding his hand and saying, "You remember how we studied together? You remember the school days?" It's so exciting sometimes if you meet an old friend and you want to recollect your school times. Recently I was just chance searching for some school aspect during our education seminar, and I came across my old school, the Frank Anthony Public School in Bangalore. And there's a website. I thought, wow, I never knew there's a website. And I just went inside. And then I went to the period's alumni, it says. Then I went and saw who's a schoolgirl and head girl, and then I know her, she's also a devotee now. Her name is Sunita. I saw her name. Oh, she's here. And then I saw my brother also studied there, the batch that passed, and we met the principal, T.E. Allen there, he's listed, and the staff members who taught me, Mr. Simcock, Mr. Young, and all of them, Fernandez, they were all there. And I was thinking, wow. And I went down memory lane, and I was thinking of school friends. It would be wonderful to meet with some of them and see where they are, what they are, and maybe give them some Krishna consciousness. So even me, I felt that, oh, it would be nice to meet somebody during this lockdown period. They must all be at home. This is a good time to talk to them, and they'll be happy to talk to you. They have the time to talk to you. So you go down memory lane sometimes. You studied in college, you studied in this thing, and there are opportunities for you to speak to. Recently, I attended an alumni session of the college friends of mine. I did engineering in NIT Trichy, and I went and met them in Mysore. They had booked a resort. They booked a flight for me to come. I heard that you are a sadhu, a sannyasi. Please come and give us some words of wisdom. And so I went. I was able to speak to them, and they were very surprised meeting me. I gifted them all a book of Science of Self-Realization and told them to read it, and had the opportunity. And connecting them was exciting because I remembered who they were. Nice people. So they became very interested. So here is Krishna and Sudāmā. Okay, what I am saying is nothing connected to in one sense, but the tendency for us to recollect things that's happening here, and Krishna is recollecting with Sudāmā. I remember how we studied together and how we were serving our Guru, and they remember their teachers. The Supreme Lord said, "My dear Brahmana, you know well the ways of dharma. After you offered the gift of remuneration to our Guru and returned home from his school, did you marry a compatible wife or not? Now Krishna is starting, because he wants Sudama to give that gift. So he's reminding him, it seems. Now we have spoken, everything is fine, you have rested, you had prasadam, food, and everything is good. Now is my chance to reciprocate those wonderful devotional feelings that you have through the gift you brought for me. So Sudama is not going to on his own give that. So he still got it around his shoulder, hanging in a cloth, and it's between his arms and his shoulder. So he's reminding him, what happened after you left school? You know, that period when a person finishes his education and he gives a gift to his guru, and there's a seating, and then there's a little sacrifice done, and then he's going home, he's finished his studies, and he gives a dakshina to the guru. That is called a samavartana. Samavartana period is when you finished your studies and you acknowledge, I've received knowledge from my teacher, and samavartana ceremony is performed, and the student offers to the teacher guru dakshina. It need not necessarily be a few bucks or something. It could be anything according to what the student values. Sometimes they give something, sometimes they do some favor, sometimes they bring whatever. It's not really very important. But then he's reminding, you know, what happened after that? Did you go back and get married? Yeah, because that is the time the brahmacharya life is over, samavartana, and if you want, you can go back and you can start your grihastha life. So Krishna is inquiring, what did you do? Right? Among civilized, this is the purport to restrict. Among civilized human beings, the question of ashrama or spiritual order is significant. In other words, every human being must execute prescribed duties as a celibate student, a married man or woman, a retired person or an ancient. Since Lord Krishna could see that the brahmana was poorly dressed, he inquired if his friend had been properly married and was executing the duties of household life. Since he was not dressed as a renunciant, he would be without a suitable ashrama unless he were properly married. So he's reminding him about his wife, so that he will remember, yeah, my wife gave a gift, you know, incidentally. He would say that, isn't it? You remind yourself about. Krishna was starting to remind him. Prayo griheshu te chittam akama vihitam tatha naivati priyase vidvan dhaneshu viditam hime. Even though you are mostly involved in household affairs, your mind is not affected by material desires. Nor, O learned one, do you take much pleasure in the pursuit of material wealth. This I am well aware of. What a strong hint. You have come here to ask me what your wife asked. I know that. Spell it out. I know you're not interested in wealth at all. I know you will not ask me. But he's giving him a good hint about two things. About your wife, the gift she gave me, and about your wife wanting you to ask me for something. So it's a very strong hint. I know about it. I'm super soul in everybody's heart and want it to come out of you. Give me the gift and ask me what your wife has sent me for. I'm eager to give it to you. But Sudama, he was not going to give the gift. He was not going to ask. Such a character, Sudama. He's very shy and he thinks, how can I ask? That's not at all proper for me to ask. Wealth from the Lord, I should only ask for devotion, as his wife already engaged him and knew. Purport. Lord Krishna here reveals that in fact he was well aware of his friend's situation. Sudama was actually learned and spiritually advanced, and therefore he is not interested in ordinary sense gratification as is the common man. Right? Kamairahada chetasaha tyajantaha prakriti daiviryatāham loka sangraham. Having renounced all material propensities which spring from the Lord's illusory energy, some people execute worldly duties with their minds undisturbed by mundane desires. They act as I do to instruct the general populace. Krishna is glorifying Sudama for his wonderful stance. Kachit gurukule vasam brahman smarasi nuhyatah Dvijo Vijñāya Vijñēyam Tamasaha Paramashnute. My dear Brahmana, do you remember how we lived together in our spiritual master's school? When a twice-born student has learned from his guru all that is to be learned, he can enjoy spiritual life which lies beyond all ignorance. Now Krishna is instructing for our benefit, using this pastime. He said, Guru is very important. You can learn everything you need for your life from the spiritual master. Savai sat karmanam sakshat dujater iha sambhavah adyo yatrashaminam yataham jnanado guruhu. Very important quote. My dear friend, he who gives a person his physical birth is his first spiritual master. And he who initiates him as a twice-born brahmana and engages him in religious duties is indeed more directly his spiritual master. But the person who bestows transcendental knowledge upon the members of all spiritual orders of society is one's ultimate spiritual master. Indeed, he is as good as my own self. This is very important to know, because Krishna is speaking about the instructional spiritual master. So 3 gurus are being mentioned. One is the father who gives physical birth, makes physical birth possible. And this birth is Upanayanam he gives. He gives Brahma Upadeshan. You know, in Brahmins' houses, you will see that the father will speak in the right ear, put a cloth. That's Upanayanam ceremony. That time, the father is given the seed, and he is the real reason for the birth. He's brought the physical birth, biological birth. And then the physical birth really means that it is his duty to initiate him into Brahman understanding, Brahma Upadesh. So that Upanayanam is what is being spoken about. And then the Guru, he also gives initiation so that the Vedas can be started. So education and knowledge can be started. That's the second birth. But the third birth, Krishna is saying, when that instructional guru speaks to you about Krishna, when you get siksha about Krishna, when you get learning about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when Sambandha Gyan is established, that guru, Krishna is saying, is indeed most important. But the person who bestows transcendental knowledge upon the members of all the spiritual orders of society is one's ultimate spiritual master. Indeed, he is as good as my own self. Yataham jnanado guruhu. One who gives his transcendental knowledge about Krishna is as good as Krishna himself. Right? So that is mentioned here as a very interesting sloka which Bhanu Maharaj often quotes and explains. Nanva artha kovida brahman varnashramavatamiha ye maya guruna vacha taranti agno bhavarnavam. Certainly, O Brahmana, of all the followers of the Varnashrama system, those who take advantage of the words I speak in my form as the spiritual master and thus easily cross over the ocean of material existence, best understand their own true welfare. Krishna is very directly saying, although they have been in their guru's ashram, they have learned from Sandipani Muni so many things. There is a third requirement, a third instruction. What Krishna speaks. Shri Bhagavan uvāca. You hear that in the Bhagavad Gita? That is supreme instruction. Whoever speaks that to you is your spiritual guru. And Krishna is saying is very important. And he's saying, I speak in my own form, Krishna. And that is most important instruction. Okay? So I, the soul of all beings, am not as satisfied by ritual worship, Brahmanical initiation, penances or self-discipline as I am satisfied by faithful service rendered to one's spiritual master. So Krishna is first describing all the gurus. Then he's saying the spiritual master who gives instructions on transcendental form of Krishna and his activities is most important. And he's saying, I am most pleased when you render faithful service to that spiritual master. Right? Very interesting. So then, O Brahmana, do you remember what happened to us while we were living with our spiritual master? Once our Guru's wife sent us to fetch firewood, and after we entered the vast forest of twice-born one, an unseasonal storm arose with fierce wind and rain and harsh thunder. Actually, so I think it's getting late. So we'll stop here. We will discuss about this tomorrow again. Thank you very much for being present here today in the Bhagavatam session of this beautiful instance of Krishna meeting with Sudāmā. And we will discuss tomorrow about the childhood pastimes in Sandipani Muni's ashram, Sudāmā and Krishna, and how they got benedicted by Guru, and how Sudāmā went back, and what Krishna does to him. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Guru Premanande. Hari Bol.